The sun was just beginning to slip behind the roof, painting golden rays that stretched across the garden. I was in the backyard, watering the camellias I'd planted 2 springs ago right after Michael left. This year they bloomed late, but fuller than ever, their petals so dense it was as if they were trying to make up for all the silence. I moved slowly, letting the water pool around the roots. It was one of those quiet afternoons when the world seems to stop for a moment. Then my phone buzzed in the pocket of my apron. I wiped my hands on the rag tied at my waist and pulled it out, thinking it was maybe a weather alert or something from the neighborhood group, but it was a message from Alexandra. "Melissa will take your place on the trip. She fits in better." That was it. No greeting, no punctuation, no explanation. For a moment, I didn't move. Then the watering can slipped from my hands and hit the mulch with a dull thud, splashing my feet and the hems of my jeans. I didn't even flinch. My eyes stayed fixed on the screen, as if the words might change into something else if I stared long enough. They didn't. A hollow feeling spread in my chest, as though someone had taken something from me without asking. I read the message again and again. "Melissa will take your place on the trip. She fits in better." Just like that, as if I were a canceled reservation, an outdated version of something that no longer fit. Almost by instinct, I bent down and turned off the water. The soil was soaked, puddles forming beneath the camellias. Water trickled toward the stones. I straightened up, my knees protesting, and walked to the back porch, each step heavier than the last. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the stack of folders I'd used to plan the trip. I'd spent weeks researching places along the Puerto Vallarta coast, beaches for the kids, rental houses near ice cream shops, a small museum that Alexandra said the twins would love. I even made a spreadsheet titled Tora's Family Summer 2025. I ordered matching t-shirts from a local print shop, thinking they'd make the little ones laugh. 3 months of planning, booking, emailing the owner of the beach house, buying the sunscreen Alexandra liked because she said the July sun in Vallarta was brutal. I even asked for gluten-free options for David, knowing he'd never request them but would always be grateful. I reopened the message. "Melissa will take your place on the trip. She fits in better." A clock was ticking somewhere, maybe the one on the stove, but all I could hear was a faint ringing in my ears. Melissa, Alexandra's mother-in-law. Perfect posture. Impeccable manners. The ability to say nothing at all while smiling. Of course Melissa fit in. I set the phone face down, but picked it back up again and typed, "Understood." That was it. I hit send and turned off the screen. The sun had disappeared completely, and the kitchen was dark without the lights on. I didn't move. My hands were still damp. I looked at the folders on the table and thought of the picture I had imagined. Everyone on the beach, the grandkids laughing, Alexandra with her sunglasses pushed up on her head, and me beside her with a glass of hibiscus water. That image cracked a little in my mind, just enough for everything beneath it to begin shifting. 2. The silence that follows. I didn't hear from Alexandra for the rest of the day or the next. No thank you, no polite apology. The message stayed there on my phone, answered with a single word, "Understood." And that was enough for her to move on. I moved around the house as if I were walking underwater, slow, deliberate, suspended. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon from the banana bread I'd baked for the kids a few days earlier. I'd wrapped each slice in wax paper, their names written in red marker. They were still in the freezer, ready to be packed into the cooler for the trip. Now the cooler sat untouched by the back door, and the banana bread remained frozen solid. I tried to keep busy, sweeping the porch, folding laundry, watering the ferns. But the silence settled deeper than usual, as if it knew something had changed and intended to stay forever. That afternoon I sat in the living room, not really watching TV, just listening to the low murmur of voices I couldn't quite follow. On the mantel above the fireplace, a row of family photos looked back at me, Alexandra in her graduation gown, David smiling beside her, the twins dressed up for Day of the Dead, me holding their tiny hands at the market, and then Michael. Always Michael, just out of frame or with his arm around my shoulder, his laughter caught in the shine of his eyes. That laughter used to fill this house, especially when Alexandra was little and insisted on putting ketchup on her pancakes or renamed the cat Pillow. He'd throw his head back and she'd laugh like she'd just won a prize. Now the silence wasn't peaceful, it was the kind that comes after something you can't undo. Karen came by around 4, like she did most Thursdays, her grocery bag full of overripe peaches and a puzzle borrowed from the community center. "You look tired, Ellen," she said, peering over her glasses. "That vacation trip must be coming up soon." I didn't correct her. I just nodded and said, setting the kettle to boil, though I wasn't sure I wanted tea. She gave me that look of hers, the one that said she didn't believe a single word I wasn't saying. We sat on the porch in silence, and I let her talk about her grandson's baseball tournament and the new neighbor who plays saxophone at odd hours. I tried to listen. I really did. When she left, she squeezed my hand and said, "You know, just because you don't say it doesn't mean you don't feel it." I didn't reply. I watched her go down the steps, her bag of peaches swinging in one hand. That night, I reheated soup I didn't want and turned off the porch light early. I checked my phone once before bed. Nothing from Alexandra, not a word, not even one of those thumbs-up emojis she uses now instead of talking. And somehow, that was worse. The next morning, I opened the living room curtains and saw the suitcases for the trip still lined up by the door, Alexandra's with the blue handle, David's duffel bag, the kids' backpacks with cartoon patches. I had packed them myself 2 nights before, matching socks, sunscreen neatly tucked in. I stared at them for a long while before unzipping the first one and slowly unpacking, as if peeling away the last layer of a story that no longer belonged to me. 3. The one who took my place. The photos started appearing Saturday morning. I wasn't looking for them. I had just opened Facebook to check the neighborhood watch group. Someone had posted about stray dogs near the elementary school, and I thought maybe Karen had shared it, but there they were, right at the top of my feed. Alexandra had tagged me. I clicked out of habit. The first photo was in a sunlit cafe downtown. Alexandra and David sat on either side of Melissa, smiling as if they had just solved something. Melissa wore her usual pastel linen and pearls, her hair perfectly styled, her hands folded neatly on the table, as if she had been waiting for the camera. Alexandra's caption read, "Farewell brunch before the trip. Feeling blessed to have such an elegant second mother." Elegant. Second mother. I didn't know whether to laugh or drop the phone. There were more. The kids hugging Melissa, her holding a mimosa mid-laugh, Alexandra leaning toward her, their cheeks touching. In one of the photos, Melissa had her hand on David's shoulder, a napkin neatly folded on her lap, like someone who had done this 1,000 times. Maybe she had. I scrolled through the photos slowly, as if plucking petals off a flower one by one. Not a single mention of me. Every trace of the months I'd spent organizing the trip, the printed itineraries, the folder with notes, the menu Alexandra had said would be perfect if it included shrimp, all gone, erased, as if I were a misplaced booking quietly canceled. I leaned back, set the phone down, and fixed my eyes on the photos above the fireplace. One was from Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Alexandra and Melissa were both there. Melissa had brought her famous lemon pie and a set of napkin rings she insisted were perfect for a formal table. I remember she raised her eyebrows when I set the table with my usual ceramic plates. "How charmingly rustic," she'd said. Then, with a small laugh, added, "Ellen, do you like your dessert sweet? You know, a lighter touch of sugar would let the pie breathe." She always said things like that: breathe, elevate, refine, as if everything I did was just a little too rough, too ordinary. Once she told Alexandra, right in front of me, that I had such a loud laugh it made the whole house join in. And Alexandra had smiled. She didn't say anything, but I saw it, the small shift, the new doubt forming around things that had once been certain. Now Melissa wasn't just part of the family, she had taken my place. At the table, at brunch, on the trip, in the photos. I wondered if the kids called her Grandma now, or if that was still too soon. I walked to the sink and ran cold water over my hands. I wasn't crying, not yet. No, I just needed something solid, something simple. Water helped. It always had. The suitcase by the door was still open from when I unpacked it the day before. I knelt down and pulled out a bundle of neatly rolled shirts I had packed to save space. I carried them to the laundry room and started a load, pressing the button slowly, deliberately, as if it meant something. 4. The power they forgot I had. I hadn't been up to the attic since before winter. The stairs creaked now with that kind of complaint only time can make. Dust clung to everything: lamps, old Christmas boxes, a pile of Michael's university textbooks I'd never managed to give away. I didn't go up there with a purpose. I just needed to move, to be somewhere that didn't smell like hand cream or sound like silence. I opened a cracked plastic box labeled papers, keep in Michael's handwriting. I smiled at the capital letters. He always said, if you don't shout at your files, they'll get lost. At the bottom was a leather folder. I'd almost forgotten it. We used to call it our rainy day file, though I don't think we ever planned to open it. Inside were property deeds, rental contracts, notarized letters, and a faded spreadsheet Michael had printed years ago. 3 properties, all rentals: a small commercial space on Reforma Street, a duplex on Hidalgo Street, and an apartment in the historic district. I turned the pages slowly. The commercial property, my eyes narrowed when I saw the tenant's name: Torres Creative Studio, LLC. Alexandra's business, the one she started 3 years ago with David's support and our quiet blessing. She told me they found a great location through a realtor. The duplex, different names, tenants I didn't recognize, lease renewed just 6 months ago. Then, the apartment. I paused, tracing the address. I knew that building: tall columns, marble lobby, a doorman in white gloves. The tenant's name on the lease: Melissa Rivera. I sat very still. The folder felt warm in my lap, as if it had its own pulse. All 3 properties were mine. Michael had put everything in my name after his cancer diagnosis, and we never told Alexandra. We didn't want to pressure her, or make her feel indebted, or interfere. I remembered him saying, let them build their own lives. We'll make sure they're standing on something solid. I checked the back pocket of the folder. There was a card. Daniel Brooks, attorney. Michael's old lawyer. I wasn't sure if he was still practicing, but I dialed the number anyway. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was slower than I remembered, but steady. Ellen Torres, he said after I introduced myself. You were always the quiet one, but you've had the chessboard for years. We arranged to meet the next day. He said to bring the documents, and that he'd have coffee ready. Michael would be glad to know you're finally dusting off your place at the table, he added. I hung up and looked around the attic. The dust, the boxes, the slanted beams, all of it felt different now. I carried the folder downstairs, set it on the kitchen table beside the folder for Alexandra's canceled vacation, and sat there for a long time, staring at them side by side. Then I pulled out a legal pad and began making a list. 5. The silent strike. The beach house rental for the vacation was under my name. Alexandra had never asked how I'd afforded an oceanfront home, or the deposit for the private dolphin tour. She probably assumed I'd used my retirement savings. That's what mothers do: bend quietly, spend quietly, exist in the background of other people's memories. I called the agency and canceled everything. No refunds, they said. I told them that was fine. I didn't want the money. I wanted the silence that would come when they arrived at the airport and realized there was no reservation under Alexandra Torres, or Melissa Rivera, or anyone else. Later, I met with Mr. Brooks. We reviewed the contracts, the legal clauses, the expiration dates. Alexandra's studio lease had 60 days left, Melissa's apartment, 30. We drafted polite, professional non-renewal notices. I asked if I could include a personal note. He said it wasn't necessary. I said I knew. We signed the documents, printed the envelopes, and I placed them in my bag, sealed with the weight of finality. Then I went to Lorraine's salon. The last time I'd been there was 2 years ago, when Michael was still well enough to drive me. Lorraine blinked when she saw me. Just a trim, she asked. I didn't say, I want something different. She cut my hair shorter, layered softly around my face. She suggested a warm chestnut with highlights, and I said yes, without hesitation. When she turned me toward the mirror, I didn't recognize myself, not because I looked younger, but because I looked intentional, as if I had finally stepped into the center of the frame. Afterward, I went to a small boutique on Juarez Street. The woman there, Sophia, brought me tea and rolls of navy blue fabric, tailored jackets, a dress with a fitted waist. I tried them on and looked at myself without apology. When I got home, I moved the old floral couch into the garage and unrolled the new rug I'd been saving since winter. I rearranged the photos on the wall, less cluttered, more light, and donated 2 boxes of things that had started to feel like burdens. I replaced the curtains with soft linen ones that let the morning in without resistance. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel like a place waiting for someone. It felt like it belonged to someone, to me. When Alexandra called the night before her return flight, her voice was carefree. "We'll stop by Sunday afternoon," she said. "The kids want to show you their seashells. Melissa bought you a gift on the boardwalk." "That sounds nice," I said. "Why don't you all come for tea around 3?" When they arrived, I was already sitting in the sunroom, wearing the navy dress and serving tea from the good china. I heard the surprise in Alexandra's voice before she even stepped fully inside. "Mom, you look," she didn't finish. I smiled and motioned for them to sit. Everything was ready: tea, lemon cookies, fresh flowers cut from the garden. The children settled quickly. David hovered, uncertain. Melissa blinked several times, as if trying to catch up. Alexandra sat last, her eyes scanning the room slowly, as if something had changed, but she couldn't yet name what. I poured her tea and folded my hands softly in my lap. 6. The calls begin. The first call came Monday morning, just after 9. I was watering the herbs on the back porch, still in my robe. The phone rang 3 times before I answered. "Mom." Alexandra's voice cracked at the edges. "Did you see what I forwarded you?" I hadn't. I let her keep talking. "The studio got a notice, non-renewal of the lease. 60 days. No explanation, no option to extend. It has to be a mistake, right? You said the property manager was reliable." I sat down slowly on the porch chair, the phone barely touching my ear. "Well," I said, "I'm sure the owner has her reasons." There was a pause, a small gasp of disbelief. "But you always help," she said, her voice smaller now. "You've always helped fix things." I kept my voice steady. "I'm sure you'll figure it out too." That afternoon, Melissa sent a message. "Just spoke to my property manager. Seems my lease won't be renewed. Administrative mix-up, I'm sure. Could you check?" Followed by a winking emoji and a little flower. I didn't reply right away. I folded laundry, reheated soup, and waited until after dinner. Then I wrote, "I'm sure the building owner knows what she's doing. I trust her judgment." No emojis. No explanations. The next day, David called. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear how he'd frame it. "Hi, Ellen. I know things have been a little awkward, but Alexandra's really stressed. And about Melissa's lease, well, we're all just trying to understand what's going on." "I'm sure you are," I said calmly. "She thinks maybe you know the owner," he said carefully. "Could you, I don't know, talk to her? Just until we sort this out." "I'm not sure how I could help," I said. "Some things just aren't in my hands anymore." He sighed. "Alexandra says you've always been the one who holds everything together." I thought of the stacked lists, the schedules I used to make for birthdays, the cakes with each child's name written separately in icing. "Well," I said, "maybe it's time she learns to hold something on her own." I could hear the silence grow on the other end, thick with discomfort. Maybe even a flicker of realization. I ended the call kindly, but firmly. That night, I placed the signed letters by the door, ready to mail in the morning, each envelope sealed carefully, the address written with precision. 7. The final revelation. Alexandra arrived unannounced. I saw her car pull into the driveway just after lunch, the door closing with more hesitation than usual. She lingered on the porch for a moment before knocking. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in." She sat on the edge of the couch as if she wasn't sure she belonged there. Her eyes were red. She didn't look at me right away. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "Melissa thought you'd be uncomfortable on the trip, that maybe you wouldn't enjoy the restaurants or the schedule. She said sometimes you talk too much and—" I waited. I let her lose herself in her words. "I've spent my life doing what others needed," I said, folding my hands gently. "Now I'll be who I am." Then she really looked at me like she was seeing something for the first time. Or maybe just noticing what had always been there. "I got the letter," she said quietly. "From the building, the studio." I nodded. It's mine, I said. And the apartment Melissa rents? Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. I could see her mind working, calculating what that meant, what it had always meant. I've prepared a new lease, I said. So your business can continue. Fair terms, market rate, short term, with renewal options if conditions are met. And Melissa? She asked after a moment. I paused briefly. Melissa's lease ends next month. She'll need to find another place. Alexandra's eyes filled again, but she didn't speak. I stood, walked to the side table, and handed her the folder I had prepared. She took it with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't revenge, I said. It was remembering who I am. Her gaze fell to the folder. She held it in her lap like something sacred and heavy. She didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden, the camellias beginning to bloom again, stubborn as ever, reaching for the light.